You won't believe the level of nonsense I got dragged into with my HOA president, Grace. Imagine being threatened with fines, not for your yard, not for your house, but for skipping a 6-year-old's birthday party. Sounds impossible, right? Well, that's exactly what happened to me. Before we dive in, comment which country you're watching from. Let's see how far this story travels. It all started when Grace, the self proclaimed queen of our neighborhood, knocked on my door one Saturday morning. She had a flyer in hand, bright pink with balloons on the sides. "You are required to attend my daughter's birthday next weekend," she said, with the same tone you'd expect from someone issuing a court summons. I thought she was joking, so I laughed. She didn't. Grace leaned in closer and explained that the party was an official HOA community event and that all homeowners were obligated to attend. She even pointed to some bogus clause in a community participation rule she had clearly typed up herself. I politely told her I couldn't make it. I had a family commitment out of town that weekend. That's when her smile tightened and she said, "Refusal to attend will result in a violation notice." At first, I brushed it off. I mean, how could anyone take this seriously? But a few days later, I found an envelope taped to my door. Inside was a notice: failure to attend mandatory community function subject to a $150 fine. Signed, Grace, HOA president. I stood there staring at it, half expecting someone to jump out with a hidden camera and yell, "Gotcha!" But nope, it was real. Grace actually filed a violation because I declined to eat cake and play pin the tail on the donkey. I decided to let it sit and see if she'd drop it. Instead, the harassment grew. Grace sent out mass emails to the entire neighborhood calling me uncooperative and a negative influence on community morale. She even cornered me in the driveway one evening, saying, "The HOA is watching and there will be consequences if you don't start complying." That's when I realized this wasn't just about a birthday party. Grace was testing her power, and if I let her get away with this, she'd only push further. If you're enjoying this HOA story so far, like and subscribe because the story is only going to get better. The birthday party day arrived, and as promised, I wasn't there. My family and I were visiting relatives out of town. I thought maybe, just maybe, Grace would throw her little event, get over herself, and move on. Oh no, that wasn't in her playbook. While we were gone, my phone started buzzing. First, it was emails, then text messages. By noon, I had a dozen missed calls from Grace. Each voicemail was more unhinged than the last. One of them literally said, "Your absence is a direct violation of HOA bylaws. I will be contacting law enforcement." I actually laughed out loud at that one. What cop on earth was going to enforce birthday attendance? Still, by the time we got home that evening, the situation had escalated. 2 police cruisers were parked outside my driveway. I pulled up, and before I could even get my luggage out, one of the officers approached me. "Sir, are you the homeowner?" "Yes," I said cautiously. "We received a call from the HOA president. She claims you refused to comply with mandatory neighborhood regulations." I blinked. "Wait, you mean the birthday party?" The officer looked uncomfortable, but he nodded. "She said you were deliberately disrupting community order and causing distress to residents." I could see Grace standing behind them, arms crossed, trying to look like some kind of martyr. She had neighbors gathered around, whispering like this was the trial of the century. I pulled out the so-called violation notice and handed it to the officer. "This isn't law. There's no such rule in the HOA charter. And even if there were, it's not a criminal matter. This is harassment." The officer sighed, glanced at the paper, and then said to Grace, "Ma'am, this isn't a police issue. We don't arrest people for not attending parties." Grace's face turned crimson. "But he's undermining the community. This is sabotage." The officer cut her off. "Ma'am, you've misused emergency services. Filing false police reports is a crime under state law." That's when Grace's confidence cracked. She started backpedaling, claiming it was a misunderstanding and that she just wanted the HOA taken seriously. But I wasn't about to let it slide. Grace thought she could wiggle out of it by playing the misunderstood HOA president card, but I wasn't letting her rewrite the script. I told the officers right there on my lawn, "I want this documented. She used 911 to report a fake crime. That's abuse of emergency services." The officers nodded and began writing up a report. Grace tried to interrupt, waving her hands. "You don't understand. This was about unity. He's dividing the neighborhood." One officer replied, calm but firm, "Ma'am, unity doesn't involve calling the police over birthday attendance. What you did falls under filing a false report. And under state statute, it's a misdemeanor, sometimes even a felony if it ties up resources. Grace's mouth actually fell open. She wasn't used to being challenged, especially in front of her audience. Neighbors who had gathered around were suddenly whispering against her. A few even laughed outright. The emperor, or in this case, the queen bee of the HOA, had no clothes. A week later, I received official notice. The police had fined Grace for misuse of emergency services, and a hearing was scheduled for her position on the HOA board. I had attended that meeting, and let me tell you, it was glorious. The room was packed. Grace tried to spin her story into a community building effort gone wrong, but people weren't buying it. I had recordings of her voicemails, copies of her bogus mandatory party notice, and the police report itself. I laid it all out calmly, one by one. By the time I finished, the board didn't just vote to censure her, they voted to remove her permanently. Grace stomped out of that room like a toddler denied candy, muttering about conspiracies and betrayal. But the damage was done. Her reputation tanked, her fines stood, and she was barred from ever holding office in our neighborhood again. The best part? Every time someone brings up birthday parties at future HOA meetings, people chuckle and say, at least attendance is optional. Karen, or Grace, whatever she calls herself, thought she could get me arrested for missing her kid's party. Instead, she lost her title, her credibility, and a chunk of cash. And I never had to sit through a forced round of happy birthday. And that's how an HOA president's ridiculous power trip over a child's birthday party ended with her losing everything.